For 20 years, I carried the mortgage for my parents' house. I was the one who ensured there was a roof over their heads, that the lights stayed on, the water ran, and the taxes were paid. It was my responsibility. It was just what I did. And then my sister Chloe came home. She appeared on a Tuesday afternoon with a fleet of 6 matching designer suitcases and an expression of profound boredom. With a perfectly manicured finger, she pointed toward the small sunroom off the living room, the room I used for my repair business, the room where my husband, Leo, kept his equipment. "Put my things in there," she instructed the movers. I was standing in the hall, clutching a box filled with her absurdly expensive shoes. "Chloe, that's our office," I said. My mother, Margaret, didn't even glance in my direction. A smug little smile played on her lips, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "She needs the best room, Clara. She needs the good light." "But this is our home too," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. Finally, my mother turned to me, her eyes like chips of ice. "If you don't like it," she said, her voice flat and final, "you and your husband can always move out." And so we did. We loaded our truck that very evening. We walked away from the house I had paid for. We left them standing in the driveway, silhouetted by the porch light. 3 months later, my phone buzzed. It was Chloe, and she was hysterical. Before we get into the rest of this story, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. It all began when I was 16. My father, Robert, had been let go from the steel mill. It was the 3rd time in 5 years. My mother, Margaret, cleaned offices downtown, but her income was never enough to bridge the gap. The atmosphere in our house grew heavy, thick with the scent of unpaid bills and burnt coffee. Every time the phone rang, my mother would flinch, convinced it was a debt collector. My sister Chloe was 14. She was the star, the pretty one, the brilliant one. She had violin lessons and was in the advanced placement track at school. My parents would discuss her potential in hushed, reverent tones, as if it were a delicate, priceless artifact they were charged with protecting. My potential, on the other hand, was never a topic of conversation. I was just Clara, reliable Clara. I spotted a help wanted sign in the window of a local manufacturing plant. Assembly line workers. No experience necessary. For me, it was necessary. The plant was on the far side of town, a sprawling brick building that perpetually smelled of hot plastic and ozone. It was an evening shift, 4 hours a night, 5 nights a week. I took 2 buses to get to the interview. The foreman, a man with a deeply weary face and a shirt stained with coffee rings, glanced at my application. "You're 16, he stated, not as a question. "I'm a hard worker," I replied. He let out a long, slow sigh. "You start Monday. Don't be late." I was never late. The work was brutal. I stood for hours at a long white assembly table under the incessant buzzing hum of fluorescent lights. My task was to take a small green circuit board and painstakingly insert a series of tiny color-coded wires. I performed this action again and again, thousands of times. My fingers ached. My back screamed. The buzzing of the lights became the soundtrack to my life. But I did it. After 2 weeks, I received my first paycheck. It came in a small brown paper envelope with my name typed neatly on the front. I clutched it in my hand for the entire bus ride home. It felt substantial. It felt like a solution. It contained $132. I can help, I thought. Maybe this will make Mom smile. I found her in the kitchen, her back to me as she stood at the sink. My dad was at the table, lost in the grim headlines of the newspaper. In the living room, I could see Chloe at her desk, illuminated by a study lamp, a perfect little circle of light focused on her homework. I could hear the faint, rhythmic scratch of her pen. "Mom," I said softly. She turned, drying her hands on a faded dish towel. "What is it, Clara?" I held out the envelope. "I got paid." She took it from me, her fingers surprisingly quick. She tore it open, pulled out the cash and the pay stub, and counted the bills. I held my breath, waiting for a good job, Clara, waiting for a thank you, waiting for an "I'm so proud of you." She folded the cash and tucked it into the pocket of her apron. She glanced at the pay stub, then back at me. Her eyes were completely unreadable, flat and empty. "You eat under this roof," she said. "You help pay for it." Then she turned back to the sink. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, a sudden chill creeping through me. I looked over at my dad, but he just rustled the newspaper, turning a page. The only sound in the house was the quiet, industrious scratch, scratch, scratch of Chloe's pen. And that was how it started. Every 2 weeks, I'd come home and hand my mother the envelope. She'd take the money. Chloe needed a new dress for a violin recital. My money covered it. Dad needed a new prescription filled. My money paid for it. The gas bill was overdue. My money paid for that too. I never saw a dollar of it again. It wasn't my money, it was simply house money. When I turned 17, I got my driver's license, thinking it might open the door to a better job. "Why?" my mother asked, her tone sharp. "The plant is good, steady money." "It's not what I want to do with my life," I said. "Don't be ungrateful," she snapped back. "Some people have nothing." So I stayed. I graduated high school. I didn't go to the prom. I didn't have the money for a dress. I worked at the plant. Chloe, meanwhile, was the family's crown jewel. Straight A's, lead in the school musical, voted most likely to succeed. My parents attended every single one of her award ceremonies. They sat in the front row, their faces beaming with pride. They never once came to visit me at the plant. When Chloe started applying to colleges, it became the sole topic of conversation in our house. Chloe is visiting the state university. Chloe needs a new wardrobe for her interviews. Chloe's admissions essay is a work of genius. She earned a partial scholarship, but it was far from a full ride. "We need money for her tuition," Mom announced one night at dinner, "and for her dorm room, and for books." I stared down at my plate of instant mashed potatoes. "Clara," my father said, finally looking up from his paper, "you'll need to pick up more shifts." So I did. I started working on Saturdays. The day they drove Chloe off to college was a monumental event. My mother wept openly. My father spent the morning polishing his old sedan. They packed the trunk with brand new luggage, a new designer comforter, a new laptop, all of it paid for with my money. I stood on the front porch and waved as they drove away. Chloe, in the passenger seat, was already on her phone, not even glancing back. She was on her way to her bright, shiny new life. I turned, went back inside the quiet house, and walked to my room. I put on my work uniform and waited for the bus to take me to the plant. I was the one who worked, the one who stayed, the one who paid. I thought that was just my role. I thought that was what it meant to be family. I was so incredibly wrong. It was only the beginning. The years began to blur. I turned 19, then 21, then 24. My existence was a flat, predictable line. Wake up, go to the plant, give Mom the money, go to sleep, repeat. Chloe would come home for holidays, each time a slightly different version of herself. One year, she had a trendy, asymmetrical haircut. The next, she announced she was a vegan. The year after that, she was consumed with plans for a summer trip to Italy. "It's for my art history major," she'd explain, waving her fork dismissively. "It's essential." My parents would nod in unison. Of course, dear, whatever you need. Then their eyes would slide to me. Clara, the car insurance premium is due. I never traveled. I never bought myself new clothes. My one and only indulgence was a small workbench I'd set up in a corner of the damp basement. I started fixing things. Old radios, broken toasters, my coworkers' faulty coffee makers. I found a deep satisfaction in taking something apart, diagnosing its problem, and putting it back together in working order. It was my secret world, the only part of my life that felt entirely my own. One day, I came home from work. I was 25 years old, my body aching from a double shift. Chloe was home for the summer. She was lounging on the front porch swing, sipping iced tea and reading a thick novel, looking cool and elegant in a new sundress. "Mom needs you," she said without looking up from her book. The kitchen sink is clogged again. I went inside. My mother was at the kitchen table, which was buried under a mountain of bills. She radiated a familiar aura of anger. "I got my promotion," I said, trying to inject some cheer into the room. I had been made a shift supervisor. "Good," she replied, not looking up. "The property taxes went up." "How much is the new check?" I told her. She finally looked at me. "That's it? That barely covers the increase." The small bubble of pride I'd been carrying all day deflated instantly, leaving behind a familiar hollow ache. "The sink is backed up," she said, gesturing with her pen. I went to the sink, got down on my hands and knees, and started clearing out the cabinet underneath, the smell of old soap and damp wood filling my nose. From the porch, I could hear Chloe laughing into her phone, talking to a college friend. I could hear the aggressive scratching of my mother's pen as she wrote out checks with my money. I was on the floor, in the dark, under the sink, and I had never felt so alone. The years continued to melt into one another, a long, monotonous gray smear. I was 27, then 30, then 32. I was still Clara, still at the plant. As a supervisor, I had my own tiny office and a better paycheck. But every time my income increased, so did my share, as my mother, Margaret, expertly called it. She never called it rent. "Clara, your share needs to go up," she'd announce. "The furnace is acting up, so I paid for a new furnace. Clara, your share isn't enough this month. The roof has a leak, so I paid for a new roof. I wasn't saving money, I wasn't building a life. I was just paddling furiously to keep my family's leaky boat from sinking, and I was getting exhausted." Chloe graduated and moved to a major city, landing a job in marketing. She posted glamorous photos online, her stylish apartment, her trendy friends, her exciting new life. My parents printed out these photos and stuck them to the refrigerator with magnets. "Look at our Chloe," my mother would boast to her friends. "She's doing so well. We're so proud." They never pointed to the new furnace and said, "Look at our Clara. She kept us warm last winter." I was invisible, a utility, the human ATM who signed the checks. Then, when I was 33, my father had a massive heart attack. I got the call at work. It was my mother, her voice a high-pitched shriek I'd never heard before. "It's your father! It's Robert! Get here now!" I didn't even clock out, I just ran. I drove so fast the car shuddered and I found them in the emergency room. My father was on a gurney, his face pale and slack. My mother was hunched in a plastic chair, her face buried in her hands. When she saw me, she looked up and whispered, "You took too long." That was the first thing she said to me. Not "Thank God you're here." Not "I'm so scared." Just an accusation. The following months were a blur of hospitals and doctors. My father survived, but he was a changed man. He couldn't work. He could barely walk. He needed constant care. Chloe flew in for a weekend. She was there for exactly 48 hours. She walked into the hospital room. took one look at our father, burst into tears, and declared, "I can't. I just can't see him like this." She spent the rest of her visit in the hallway with my mother, where they held hands and cried together about the tragedy of it all. I was the one who met with the doctors. I was the one who learned how to manage his medications. I was the one who signed the mountains of paperwork. I was the one who dealt with the insurance company. The agent was polite but firm. "I'm sorry, Ms. Miller," he said. "Your father's policy doesn't cover long-term in-home care or extensive rehabilitation." I looked at the estimates. They ran into the tens of thousands. I looked at the list of necessities: a hospital bed, a walker, a wheelchair ramp for the front steps. Chloe was already at the airport flying back to her important life. My mother was at home weeping. My father was in a wheelchair, staring blankly at a wall. So I went to the bank. I took out a personal loan. I didn't tell them. I just did it. I hired contractors to build the ramp. "It's so ugly, Clara," my mother complained. "It makes the house look like a clinic." I hired a physical therapist. "She's so young," my mother complained. "What could she possibly know? She's probably overcharging us." I paid for the grab bars in the bathroom. I paid for the prescription copays. I paid for the adult diapers and the special dietary supplements. And I worked. I took every overtime shift I was offered. I'd come home, exhausted, and take care of my father. I bathed him, fed him, and read him the sports section of the paper. My mother? She mostly watched from her armchair, the television blaring. "You missed a spot," she'd comment as I cleaned him. "His soup is getting cold," she'd say, as I patiently helped him drink. One night I was at the kitchen table. It must have been 2 in the morning. I had all the bills spread out before me. The hospital bills, the loan documents, the household expenses, and my latest pay stub. It wasn't enough. It was never going to be enough. I dropped my head onto the table, the papers crinkling beneath my forehead. I was too tired to cry. I was just hollow. My mother came into the kitchen, cinching the belt of her robe. She glanced at the sea of paper, then at me. Her face was a hard, cold mask. "This is a mess, Clara," she said. "I'm trying, Mom," I whispered. "I'm trying." She just shook her head, her expression one of pure disgust. "If you had been a son," she said, her voice low and sharp as a shard of glass, "we'd be better off. A son would have a real career. A son would have this handled. A son wouldn't be so weak." I looked up at her, and in that instant something inside me broke. It was the last fragile thread of hope I'd been clinging to. All those years I had been waiting for a thank you. I had been waiting for an "I'm proud of you." I had been waiting for an "I love you." And I finally understood it was never coming. I stopped waiting. I picked up my pen. I looked at the numbers. I figured out a way. I would take out a second loan. I'd sell my car and take the bus. We'd eat more pasta, less of everything else. I would handle it, but I was done waiting for gratitude. Gratitude was a luxury I simply could not afford. My only job was to pay. The house had become my prison, the bills my shackles. My family were my wardens, and I was the model prisoner. I never raised my voice. I never complained. I just worked. I just paid. I just slowly disappeared. I was 33 years old and my life was over. I just hadn't realized it yet. My life flattened into a gray, repetitive cycle. Work, home, bills, care. Work, home, bills, care. My hands were perpetually chapped from washing dishes and my father. My mind was a constant swirl of numbers, the mortgage, the electric bill, the pharmacy copay. I had ceased to be a person. I was a function, the one who paid. Then the plumbing finally gave out. It was an old house, the one I had been paying for but had never felt was mine. A pipe under the bathroom sink burst. and water was suddenly everywhere. My mother, predictably, became hysterical. "This is your fault, Clara. You were supposed to have fixed that." I had never been told to fix it. I just looked at the spreading pool of water. This was beyond my skill set. My little basement workbench was for toasters, not for floods. I found a 24-hour plumbing service and braced myself for the cost. A truck pulled up an hour later, and a man climbed out. He was tall, wearing a simple blue work shirt with a name stitched over the pocket. Leo. He had kind eyes. That was the first thing I noticed. They weren't angry or judgmental or disappointed. They were just calm. "Looks like you've got a problem," he said, nodding toward the water seeping under the door. "I know," I said. My mother appeared on the porch. "How much is this going to cost?" "You're tracking mud everywhere." Leo just gave her a polite, patient nod. "I'll know as soon as I take a look, ma'am." He went inside, quiet and efficient. He shut off the main valve, assessed the damage, and came back to the kitchen where I was standing. "Okay," he said. "The pipe split. I can patch it for now, but this whole section is corroded. You're going to need to replace it soon." He showed me the estimate. It was a lot. I felt that familiar cold knot tighten in my stomach. "Okay," I said, glancing at my checkbook. "I'll have to pay you in 2 installments. I get paid on Friday." He looked at me, not at my worn-out clothes or my tired expression. He just looked directly at me. "That's fine," he said. "No problem." While he worked, I made a pot of coffee. When he finished, his hands were covered in grease. I poured him a cup. "Thank you," he said, and he smiled. A genuine smile. Through the open basement door, he saw my workbench, cluttered with wires and tools. "What's all that?" he asked. "Oh, nothing," I said, feeling a flush of embarrassment. "I just tinker with things, small electronics." He walked over to it and picked up an old radio I'd just resoldered. "This is good work," he said, his voice full of genuine appreciation. "Really clean. You've got a steady hand." I just stared at him. It was the first compliment I'd ever received for my work. Ever. "It's just a hobby," I mumbled. "It's a skill," he corrected me, finishing his coffee. "A real, marketable skill." He came back that Friday to collect the rest of his payment, and he brought a box of old, broken power tools with him. "Was going to toss these," he said. "Figured you might be able to use them for parts." And then he asked if I wanted to get a burger with him after my shift. I was 33 years old. I had never been on a real date. I have to be home by 10, I said, to help with my father." "A burger doesn't take that long," he replied. We went to a Greasy Spoon diner and sat in a cracked red vinyl booth. He had grease under his fingernails. I had a fresh solder burn on my wrist. He talked about his job fixing things all day. I talked about the plant. He listened. He actually listened. When I spoke about my family, I was guarded. "My father's ill," I said. "I help out." He nodded slowly. "You do more than help out, Clara. I can see it. You're holding that whole house together." I nearly started crying right there in the diner. He saw me. He truly saw me. We started seeing each other. It was quiet and simple. We'd meet for coffee before my shift. He'd come over and sit in the basement with me while I tinkered, offering advice or just keeping me company. He was the one who insisted I turn my hobby into a real side business. "You're amazing at this, Clara," he said. "Let's build a website. Let's get some business cards." We called it Clara's Fix-It. I put up flyers at the laundromat and the community center, and people started to call. I fixed their computers, their microwaves, their kids' noisy toys. I charged them for my time and put the money into a brand new bank account, an account my mother knew nothing about. It was my first real secret, my first seed of actual hope. One night, Sitting in his truck looking up at the stars, he said softly, "You deserve better, Clara." "Better than what?" "Than this. That house. Them. It's my family, Leo." "I know," he said, "but you're a person too. You're not just a paycheck." He proposed to me in the parking lot of the plant. I was coming off a double shift, smelling of ozone and exhaustion. He was waiting by my car. He didn't have a ring. He had a small, perfect brass gear from an antique clock. "I don't have much, Clara," he said, "but I'm a hard worker, and I will always be on your side. Will you marry me?" I said yes. We got married at the courthouse, just us and a woman we found online to officiate. Leo's friend from work took a few photos with his phone. I wore a simple blue dress I'd had for years. It was quiet. It was simple. It was ours. We knew we had to tell them. We went to the house for Sunday dinner, and for the first time in months, I felt that old, familiar dread. "We have some news," I said, my hand clutching Leo's under the table. My mother's eyes darted to our joined hands, her face souring. "We got married yesterday," I said. A long, cold silence descended on the room. My father continued to stare at his plate. My mother put her fork down with a sharp click. "Married?" she said. "Where? What wedding?" I showed her the photos on my phone screen. She squinted. "At the courthouse? That's not a wedding. That's a joke. No church, no reception, no family." "We're family, Mom," I said quietly. "This is an embarrassment," she spat. Just then the phone rang. It was Chloe, of course, put on speakerphone as usual, as if her voice were a public announcement. "What's going on?" Chloe's bright, brittle voice filled the room. "Your sister," Mom said, her own voice dripping with acid, "ran off and got married in some government building like a piece of trash." I heard Chloe laugh, a sharp, ugly sound. "Oh my God, Clara, you eloped? How tacky. Couldn't even rent a banquet hall. Did you honeymoon in the backyard?" My face burned with humiliation. I wanted the floor to swallow me whole. Leo, who had been silent this entire time, stood up. He squeezed my hand. He looked at my mother, then at the speakerphone. "It was our wedding, Margaret," he said, his voice perfectly calm. It was perfect. "We didn't want a reception. We just wanted to be married." He then looked at me. "Are you ready to go, honey?" I had never loved him more. I stood up. "Yes." "You are not excused," my mother snapped. "We haven't had dessert. We're leaving," I said, and we walked out, leaving them all sitting there in stunned silence. That night, Leo moved his things into my small bedroom. It was cramped, but for the first time in my life, I didn't feel alone in that house. He was my husband, and he was on my side. Life with Leo in that house became a strange, quiet war, a cold war fought with silence and pointed glares. We existed in my small bedroom, sharing a single dresser. My repair business, which was generating a decent side income, had to be relocated. My mother suddenly needed the basement for storage. So Leo and I claimed the smallest room in the house, a tiny den by the front door. It was barely large enough for a folding table and 2 chairs. He set up his tools in one corner, and I set up my soldering station in the other. We worked back to back, our chairs often bumping. It was our tiny island in a hostile sea. It was the only place in the house we could breathe. I was still paying for everything: the mortgage, the utilities, the food, my father's extensive care. Leo's income from his job went toward our car, our tools, and our secret bank account, the one I mentally labeled the escape fund. We were saving, slowly, painfully. Every dollar I earned from fixing a broken laptop felt like a small, smooth stone I was adding to a growing pile in my pocket. My family despised Leo. They hated his quiet confidence. They hated his politeness. But most of all, they hated him because he was mine. He was the one thing in my life they hadn't given me, and therefore couldn't control. My mother simply ignored his existence. My father would only grunt in response to his greetings, and Chloe, who only ever called, was openly contemptuous. "Is your little handyman husband still hanging around?" she'd ask breezily over the phone. "Tell him to fix the leaky faucet in my old bathroom next time I'm home. For free, obviously. His name is Leo," I would say through gritted teeth. "Whatever," she'd laugh. Then, one Tuesday, the phone rang. It was Chloe, but her voice was different. Not cheerful, annoyed. "I'm moving in," she announced without preamble. I stopped, a pair of wire strippers frozen in my hand. "What? What are you talking about?" "My lease is up," she said, as if I were an idiot. "And my roommate is an absolute nightmare, so I'm just going to come home for a bit. I'll be there Friday. Get the guest room ready." My blood ran cold. "Chloe, what guest room? Your old bedroom is filled with Dad's medical supplies." "No, not that dingy little room," she said. I could hear the click-clack of her keyboard in the background. She was multitasking. I wasn't even worth her undivided attention. "I need the one by the front window, the one with the good light. I'll need it for my yoga and my video calls." I looked across our tiny, cramped space at Leo, who was meticulously cleaning a set of gears. "Chloe," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "that's my office. That's where I do my repairs. Leo keeps his equipment in here. We work in here." There was a long, dramatic sigh on the other end of the line, the sigh of someone being profoundly inconvenienced. "Clara, don't be so dramatic. You can move your little hobbies to the garage or the basement. I need that room. I'm telling Mom. See you Friday." Click. She hung up. I told Leo. I watched his hands go still. He slowly placed the gear on the table. He didn't get angry. He didn't yell. He just became very, very still. "What did you say to her?" he asked. I said no, I whispered, but she didn't listen. "She's telling Mom." Of course, my mother sided with Chloe. "Don't be so selfish, Clara," she said at dinner that night, as I was carefully cutting my father's food into bite-sized pieces. "She is your sister. She's had a stressful time. She needs a soft place to land." "Where am I supposed to work?" I asked. "Where is Leo supposed to work? That business is how I pay for all of this." I gestured with my fork at the food, the table, the house itself. "You'll figure it out," Mom said, dismissing me with a wave of her hand. "You always do." Friday came. I felt nauseous all day at the plant. When I finally pulled into the driveway, a large white moving van was parked, blocking my way. Chloe was on the porch, pointing, dressed in designer sunglasses and a cream-colored coat. She looked like she was supervising a movie set, not moving back home. "No, no," she was saying to the movers. "Put that in the sunroom, the one right inside the door." I got out of my car. Leo was standing on the lawn, his arms crossed, his face a mask of stone. He'd just gotten home. "Chloe," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I hadn't known I possessed. "I told you. You can't take that room." She finally turned to me, sliding her sunglasses off. "Oh, Clara," she said, her voice dripping with pity. "Stop being so territorial. It's a room. It's Mom's house." "I pay for this house," I said. The words came out louder than I'd intended. One of the movers paused, a large designer box in his arms. Chloe's face flushed a deep red. "Don't you dare throw that in my face. You're my sister. It's your duty." She pointed a commanding finger at the room. "Put my boxes in there," she ordered the mover. "Chloe, no," I said, running past her into the house. I stood in the doorway of our tiny office. My tools were laid out on the table. Leo's toolbox was open on the floor. This was our sanctuary. "This is our room," I yelled. "You can't have it." Chloe just laughed, a short, ugly barking sound. "Look at you, fighting over this little pile of junk. It's pathetic." My mother, Margaret, emerged from the kitchen. She had been watching the entire spectacle. "Clara, stop this," she said. "Stop making a scene in front of the help. Mom, this is our livelihood. It's our office. She can't just take it." "She is your sister," Mom repeated, her voice flat, her eyes hard as granite. "She needs the best room. She needs the light." "And what about me?" I whispered, my throat constricting. "What about Leo? This is our home too." And then she said it. The words that finally, definitively broke the last link of the chain. My mother looked at me, and there was no love, no kindness, just a cold, hard finality. "If you don't like it," she said, "you and your husband can always move out." The world went silent. The movers stood frozen. Chloe was smirking again. She had won. They had finally said the quiet part out loud. I wasn't a daughter. I was a tenant. And my lease had just been terminated. I was paralyzed, unable to breathe. I felt myself begin to shrink, to apologize, to back down as I always had. I was about to say, "Okay." I was about to start packing up my soldering iron. And then Leo moved. He had been standing behind me the whole time. He stepped forward and put a firm hand on the small of my back. He didn't look at Chloe. He didn't look at my mother. He looked directly at me. "Okay," he said. His voice wasn't angry. It was clear and steady. It was the calmest sound in the world. He turned to my mother. "Then we will." My mother's jaw dropped. Chloe's smirk vanished. They thought he was bluffing. They thought I was trapped. They thought I would never, could never leave. "Leo," I whispered, my voice trembling. He didn't argue or yell or list the decades of payments I had made. He just took my hand. "Go pack a bag, honey," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Just the essentials. We're leaving." He turned to the mover who was still awkwardly holding Chloe's box. "Excuse us," he said, and he gently pushed past him into our room. He picked up his toolbox. He unplugged my soldering station. He began carrying our life out of that house. I watched him for a single, frozen second. And then I followed him. My mother's words echoed in the tense air. "If you don't like it, you and your husband can always move out." Leo's reply was like a stone dropped into a still, cold pond. "Then we will." For a moment, everyone was paralyzed. My mother's hard expression flickered with confusion. Chloe's smirk was gone, replaced by uncertainty. They had wielded that threat like a weapon for 20 years. They never imagined I would use it as an exit. Leo didn't hesitate. He walked past them and went into our bedroom, pulling a duffel bag from the closet. I stood there, my feet feeling like lead, my heart hammering against my ribs. Leave? But where would we go? What about my father? What about the bills? I looked at my mother, waiting for her to say, "Clara, don't be ridiculous. Stop this," waiting for her to say, "Fine, she can have the other room. Just stay." I was waiting for one tiny sign that she wanted me. She just stared, her face turning blotchy and red. "You're not serious," she said. It was a command, not a question. "Stop this drama, Clara. You're embarrassing me." "Go pack a bag, honey," Leo called from the bedroom. His voice was the only steady thing in my spinning world. And so I moved. I walked right past my mother. I walked past Chloe, who stood with her hands on her hips, as if this were all a deeply inconvenient theatrical performance. I went into the bedroom. Leo was already zipping his bag. I grabbed my own old bag, the one I took to the plant, and packed socks, underwear, a few work shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my toothbrush. I glanced around my childhood room, at the old yearbooks and the dusty lamp. I left it all behind. We went to the office, our tiny shared space. Chloe was blocking the doorway. "You're really going to do this?" she sneered. "Throw a tantrum and leave? How pathetic. You'll be back in a week." Leo looked at her. "Move, Chloe." She didn't budge. He didn't touch her. He just turned, went to the garage to get a small dolly, and started loading our toolboxes onto it, my soldering station, my box of spare parts. He worked in grim silence. "You can't take that," Chloe said, pointing at my workstation. "Mom and Dad probably paid for that." "I paid for it," I said, my voice a hoarse whisper. "I paid for all of it." I went to my father's room. He was in his hospital bed, staring at a blank television screen. "Dad?" I said. He turned his head slowly, his eyes cloudy. "Dad, we're leaving." I waited for him to say something. "Don't go, I need you." He just grunted, his gaze shifting from my face back to the dark screen. He was already gone. He had been for a long time. I pulled the blanket up over his arm. "Goodbye, Dad," I said. I walked out and found my mother in the kitchen, on the phone. "You won't believe what she's doing," she was whispering, loud enough for me to hear. "She's abandoning us. She's abandoning her sick father. She's a monster." I stopped, my bag in my hand. I was the monster. I, who had paid for the roof she stood under, the phone she held, the medicine that kept my father alive, and I was the monster. Leo was at the door, waiting. I looked at my mother one last time. Her back was to me. She was already rewriting history, casting herself as the victim. I walked out the front door, right past Chloe, and climbed into the cab of Leo's old red truck. He got in beside me, turned the key, and backed out of the driveway. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back, I knew I would crumble. We drove in silence, the rumble of the old truck filling the space between us. I watched my town slip by, the plant, the diner, the park, my whole life in that one small, sad place. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "I've been saving," Leo said. "So have you. We've got the escape fund, remember? I'd almost forgotten. It's not enough. It's enough for a first month's rent and a deposit." He'd already found a place, a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of the city. He had been looking for weeks, waiting for me to be ready. My mother's words had made me ready. We signed the lease that afternoon on his phone. The key was in a lockbox. The apartment was empty. It smelled of new paint and clean, cheap carpet. There was a small kitchen, a small living room, 2 small bedrooms. Our toolboxes and my workstation looked tiny in the empty space. We carried our few belongings inside. My duffel bag, his bag, a box of pantry staples. The silence was overwhelming. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. There was no buzzing from medical equipment, no blaring television, no sound of my mother's angry footsteps. "We don't have any food," I said. "I'll go get some," Leo replied. He returned an hour later with 2 sleeping bags, 4 pillows, and a large bag of takeout pizza. We had no table, no chairs. We sat on the floor in the middle of our empty living room, eating pepperoni pizza out of a cardboard box. Leo made a joke. I don't even remember what it was, but I laughed. It was a strange, rusty sound. I laughed so hard I started to cry, huge, heaving sobs of grief and relief. I wasn't the monster. I wasn't a machine. I wasn't the bad daughter. I was just Clara. And I was sitting on the floor with my husband, and I was free. That night, we slept in the sleeping bags. The carpet was rough, but I didn't care. It was the first time in 20 years I fell asleep without a feeling of dread for the next day. Freedom wasn't a grand, spectacular event. It was quiet. It was an empty room, a full stomach, and the sound of my husband breathing beside me. It was simple, and I was never, ever going back. The first month was a struggle. We bought a mattress and put it on the floor. We bought 2 folding chairs and a card table. Leo and I sat at that wobbly table, our knees touching. Okay, he said, pulling out a yellow legal pad. Let's make a plan. Our escape fund, a few $1,000s painstakingly saved from my repair business and his overtime, was nearly gone after the security deposit and first month's rent. I still have my job at the plant, I said. No, he said gently. You don't. What? Leo, I have to. How will we pay for... Clara, that plant is 40 miles from here. It's a 2-hour round trip in traffic. You'll spend a fortune on gas, and it's part of the old life. He was right. The plant was a link to the trap. So what do? Panic, cold and familiar, began to rise in my chest. We do this, he said, tapping my soldering station, which was temporarily set up on the kitchen counter. And this. He tapped his toolbox. We have our business. Let's make it a real one. So we did. We spent our last few $100s on professional business cards, precision home tech repair. We printed flyers, and I walked through our new neighborhood, tucking them into mailboxes. Leo, still working his day job, took on side gigs every evening and weekend. I took on anything I could get: broken computers, faulty lamps, dead vacuum cleaners, cracked phone screens. I set up a proper workshop in our tiny second bedroom. It was slow at first. For a few weeks, I made almost nothing. I was terrified. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, my heart pounding, the thought screaming in my head. I have to go back. I have to call them. I have to beg. And Leo would just hold me. Just one more day, Clara, he'd whisper. Give it one more day. Then a call came from a local coffee shop. Their point-of-sale system was down on a Saturday morning. I went, my hands shaking with nerves. I found the problem: a frayed wire and a fried power supply. I fixed it. The owner was so grateful he paid me double and gave me free coffee for life. He told another business owner, who told another. Suddenly, I was busy. I was driving all over our side of the city, fixing things. And I was keeping the money, every single dollar. I would deposit it into our bank account, our account. The feeling was intoxicating, powerful and terrifying all at once. It was mine. We were poor, but we were happy. We ate a lot of pasta. We furnished our apartment with finds from the thrift store: a lumpy green couch, a wobbly kitchen table. I loved every mismatched piece. At night, we'd sit on that lumpy couch with our feet up on a cardboard box, watching an old TV someone had given me, and we would talk. We held hands. I was learning to breathe again, to let my shoulders relax from their permanent position up by my ears. I was 35 years old, and I was finally learning how to live. No one from my family called. Not my mother, not my father, not Chloe. I had one moment of weakness about a month in. Should I call? I asked Leo. Just to check on Dad? He looked at me, his expression serious. Do you want to? No, I admitted. I'm scared. Scared of what? That they'll just pull me back in. Then don't call, he said simply. They have your number. If there's an emergency, they'll call. But they didn't. The silence was a statement in itself. I paid our first month's rent with money I had earned myself. It felt like a miracle. I paid the second. And the third. We were making it. 3 months to the day after we left, my phone rang. I was in the middle of replacing a cracked laptop screen. It was an unknown number from our old area code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, it rang again and again. My heart began to pound with that old, cold dread. It's an emergency, I thought. It's Dad. I finally answered. Hello? Clara? Finally? I've been calling you. It was Chloe. She didn't sound sad or scared. She sounded furious. What's wrong, Chloe? I asked, my voice flat. I got this thing in the mail. It's ridiculous. It has to be some kind of mistake. What thing? It's a bill from a bank. It's for like $2,000. It says, mortgage payment due. It's addressed to Mom and Dad, but this is a mistake, right? You were paying this. I stopped breathing. I stared at the corkboard on the wall of my new office. It was covered in invoices I had sent out that people had paid. She didn't know. She truly, genuinely did not know. She thought I was just paying rent to my mother. She thought I was helping out. She had no idea I was the bank, that I was the sole reason there was a roof over their heads, that my money, for 2 decades, had paid for every shingle, every pipe, every light bulb. They thought the house just existed by magic, that my money was their fun money for clothes and college and better lives. They never understood it was for survival. "Chloe," I said, my voice so calm it scared me. "That's the mortgage." "What? What do you mean, the mortgage?" "The mortgage. On the house." "The loan. What loan? Mom and Dad own that house." "No," I said, "they don't. They took out a huge home equity loan about 20 years ago to pay off debts. Then Dad got laid off. So I started paying it." There was a long silence on the line. I don't understand," she finally said, her voice smaller now. "You were paying rent. I was paying the mortgage, and the property taxes, and the homeowner's insurance, and the water bill, and the electric bill, and the gas bill, and all the repairs. I listed it all, my voice cold and clinical, like I was reading an invoice. More silence. "Well," she sputtered. "Well, why did you stop?" I almost laughed, a bitter, dark sound. Why did I stop? "You got a bill, Chloe?" I asked. "Yes. For $2,100, I can't pay this." "I'm not surprised," I said. "The mortgage was $1,500. Taxes and insurance were about $600 a month. That sounds about right. But, what am I supposed to do?" And then I said the simplest, most powerful words of my entire life. "I don't know, Chloe. But you were paying it," she shrieked, her voice high and thin and cracking. I took a deep breath, looking at my own, paid in full invoices on the wall. Not anymore. I hung up. My hands were shaking. My phone immediately began ringing again. I just watched it buzz on the table. "Chloe, Chloe, Chloe, my mother, my mother, my mother." I didn't answer. I just watched it ring. Leo came in. He saw my face, then the phone. "What?" "They got the mortgage bill," I whispered. His face didn't change. He just nodded, reached over and turned my phone off. "Good," he said. "Now let's go get some dinner." We thought hanging up the phone was the end. It was only the beginning of a new kind of war. After the phone calls stopped, the official-looking letters began to arrive. They came from a law firm. Cease and desist, notice of intent to sue, financial obligations. They were terrifying words on thick, creamy paper. My mother and Chloe had lawyered up. "They're not just angry," I told Leo, my hands shaking as I held the latest letter. "They're blaming me. They're claiming I withdrew financial support without proper notice. They say I've put our sick and elderly father at risk." "At risk?" I said, my voice rising. "I paid for that house for 20 years. I paid for his medicine." "It's a threat, Clara," Leo said, his voice grim. "They're trying to scare you into coming back and paying again." "I am not going back." "I know." So, we get our own lawyer. We used the money we had been saving for a newer truck. We used it to hire Evan Reed. He wasn't a fancy downtown lawyer. His office was in a strip mall above a nail salon, and he wore a slightly rumpled suit. But he had the same calm, steady eyes as Leo. We sat in his small, cluttered office, and I told him everything. The plant, the paychecks, the heart attack, the personal loans I'd taken out in my own name to pay for house repairs. I told him about Chloe and about that final, awful day. By the time I finished, I was crying with shame and exhaustion. Evan just pushed a box of tissues across his desk. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Miller," he said. "Not for your legal trouble. I'm sorry this happened to you." He took the case. The next few months were a fresh hell, a war fought with paper. My mother and Chloe sued me for breach of verbal contract and financial abandonment. Their lawyer argued that by paying for everything for 2 decades, I had created a pattern of obligation, and by stopping, I had willingly and maliciously abandoned my family. They demanded back payments. They demanded the court order me to resume paying their mortgage indefinitely. And they sued me for the money in our escape fund. They claimed my repair business was built using their electricity in their house, and therefore, they were silent partners and entitled to all profits. "They're trying to ruin us," I whispered to Leo one night, staring at the legal bills piling up on our kitchen table. "They won't win," he said, but he looked tired. We were both so tired. There was one piece of evidence I had forgotten. About a week after we left, I had changed my phone number, but Chloe had somehow found it. She had called, not screaming, but arrogant. "Okay, Clara, this little vacation of yours is over," she had said. "I'm not on vacation, Chloe. I moved out." "Right. Well, Mom and Dad are very upset, but I'm in charge now. I've decided to be generous. We'll let you keep paying your rent to them, but you can't live here anymore. As for your little repair business, you can just go ahead and cancel your clients. I don't need your handouts. I'm going to get a real job and a real lawyer and get this whole house situation sorted out." Leo had been standing there. He saw the look on my face and mouthed, "Speaker, record it." I had a small digital recorder from my repair kit, and I held it up to the phone. When I told Evan Price about it, his eyes lit up. The day in court was a surreal blur. My mother was there, dressed in a new black dress. She looked rested. Vanessa was there with a man I'd never seen, her new husband apparently. They sat on one side, we on the other. It felt like a funeral. Their lawyer went first, painting me as a cold, calculating predator who had lured my sick parents into dependency and then pulled the rug out from under them. My mother wept on cue. Vanessa put a comforting arm around her. They were a very convincing pair. Then Vanessa took the stand. "She abandoned us," she sobbed. "My poor sick father. He asks for her every day. She left us with nothing but the debt she created." "And this business?" her lawyer prompted. "That was my idea," Vanessa said, sniffing. I encouraged her, and then she just stole it. I looked at Leo. His jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth would crack. Then it was Evan's turn. "Ms. Miller," he said to Chloe, "are you saying your sister was obligated to pay your family's bills?" "She's family, of course, and you're saying she stole the business from you?" "Yes. She'd be nothing without our support." "So you felt entitled to her money? To her handouts?" Chloe's eyes flashed. "No, I don't need her handouts. That's not what I meant. She abandoned us." "Your Honor," Evan said, turning to the judge, "I have a recording of a phone call made by Ms. Chloe Miller to my client, 1 week after my client was forced to leave her home." Chloe's face went white. Evan played the recording. The courtroom was silent, except for Chloe's own clear, arrogant voice. "I'm in charge now. I've decided to be generous. You can just cancel your clients. I don't need your handouts." The recording ended. The judge, a woman with gray hair and weary eyes, looked at Chloe. She looked at my mother. Then she looked at me. For the first time, she really looked at me, and the faintest hint of a smile touched her lips. "I've heard enough," the judge said. "This is not a case of breach of contract. This is a case of family dysfunction, and while that is tragic, it is not illegal." She looked directly at my mother and Chloe. "You cannot sue your sister for deciding to live her own life. You cannot compel a grown adult to be your personal bank. She then glared at their lawyer. This is a frivolous lawsuit. You're lucky I'm not entertaining a countersuit for my client's legal fees. Case dismissed. She banged the gavel. I let out a breath I didn't even know I was holding and finally broke down. Leo wrapped his arms around me. "It's over," he whispered. "It's over, Clara. You're free." My mother and Chloe were still sitting, staring in shock. We walked out of the courtroom, and I didn't look back. I was done looking back. The lawsuit was the clean break, the final, violent snap of the chain. After that, there was only silence. We didn't celebrate. What was there to celebrate? The right to be left alone? We were just exhausted, and we were broke. The lawyer's fees had drained every last cent from our savings. We were back at square one. "So, we're back to zero," Leo said that night over our wobbly kitchen table and another meal of pasta. "We've been at zero before," I replied. "Actually," he said, a slow smile spreading across his face as he put a hand on my stomach. "We're at +1. I was pregnant. We had found out the week before the court date. It was the strangest, most wonderful feeling. In the middle of all this emotional and financial death, I was creating a life. It was our secret, a tiny warm light that only we knew about. It was what kept me going. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for our child." Life moved on. Our business, which had been crippled by the lawsuit, slowly revived. I worked. I was tired and sick in the mornings, but I worked. Leo worked every overtime shift he could get. We were building, slowly, brick by brick. We paid off the legal bills. We started a new savings account. This time, we called it Daniel's Fund. I just liked the name. It sounded strong. About 6 months later, I got a message on social media from an old coworker. "Hey Clara, you won't believe this, but I drove through your old neighborhood. There's a for sale sign on your parents' lawn." I stared at the message. A moment later, another one came through. Wait, my mistake. It's not a for sale sign. It's a foreclosure notice, bank auction. I waited to feel something, sadness, guilt, anger, but I felt nothing. It was just a house, a pile of wood and debt that had been my prison. And it was finally being torn down. I deleted the message. I went into the second bedroom. It wasn't my office anymore. Our business now had a small rented office space with a real sign. This room was a nursery. Noah and I had painted it a soft, pale yellow. The good light, the light Chloe had always wanted, streamed through the window, but it was mine now. We had furnished it with second-hand finds. A crib Leo had sanded and repainted, a rocking chair I'd cleaned and repaired. It was all ours. I stood in that quiet, sunny room and placed my hands on my round belly. I felt a kick. This was real. News of the family's collapse trickled in. Chloe vanished. Her social media was deleted. The husband from the courtroom was gone. A neighbor told me she'd moved out of state. No one knew where. My mother and father ended up in a small, government-subsidized senior apartment. The hospital bed, the railings, all the things I had paid for had been repossessed with the house. My mother called me one time from a new number. "Clara," she said, her voice thin and reedy. "Hello, Mom." "We have nothing," she whispered. I waited. It's not fair," she said. "I have to go, Mom," I said. "You did this," she hissed, the old acid returning to her voice. "You abandoned us. This is all your fault." I hung up and blocked the number. 2 weeks later, our son Daniel was born. After a long, hard labor, they placed this tiny, screaming person on my chest, and the entire world went quiet. All the noise from the past 20 years, my mother's voice, my father's silence, Chloe's laugh, the buzz of the plant, the bang of the gavel, It all just faded into nothing. The only sound was him. Leo was crying. "He's perfect," he whispered. "He's ours," I said. I had spent my life paying for things that were not mine. Now, holding my son, I knew I had finally built something worth keeping. Daniel is 3 years old now. He has Leo's calm eyes and my steady hands. This morning, I watched him in our backyard. It's not a big yard, just a small square of grass, but it's ours. He was very seriously trying to fix his little red toy truck with a plastic hammer. Leo was on the porch drinking coffee, watching me. I was in the kitchen making pancakes. Our kitchen is small, but it's warm, and the sunlight streams in. It's my sunlight now. Our life is simple. The repair business is thriving. We have 2 employees. Leo handles the home repairs. I handle the tech. We are not rich, and we never will be, but we are stable. We pay our own mortgage on our own small house. The bill comes, I pay it, and I feel a quiet sense of pride. Sometimes, I'll catch my reflection in a mirror. I'm in a hurry, trying to get Daniel's shoes on, thinking about an invoice, and for a split second, I see my mother's face in my own. I hear her voice, so clear in my memory. "If you'd been a son, we'd be better off. You'll never be anything." I used to freeze when I heard that voice in my head. I used to believe it, but not anymore. I stop. I look at my reflection. I'm 38 years old. I see the lines around my eyes from squinting at tiny circuit boards and from laughing with my husband. I see a small scar on my hand from a hot soldering iron. I see my own eyes looking back. They're not disappointed. They're just mine. Mommy, pancakes. Daniel comes running in, a smudge of dirt on his cheek, and hugs my legs. I pick him up. He's heavy and smells like grass and strawberry shampoo. This is real. My mother, my father, my sister, they are ghosts. They are a story I tell myself sometimes to remember how far I've come. My mother was wrong. I am a worker, and I'm very good at what I do. But I'm also a business owner. I'm a wife, and I am a mother. I am free. I hold my son's small hand, flip a pancake in the pan, and for the first time in my entire life, I don't owe anyone a single thing.